Good evening. On behalf of the Union County Board of Education, I call this meeting to order.
And as Chairman of the Board of County Commissioners, I'll call the Union County Board of Commissioners to order. And before we get started on the meeting, I spoke to the Chair of the Board of Education about this. As you know, we had a tragedy today in a school system in Nashville. We had a shooting and 6 were killed, including the 7. So what I'd like to do is ask Melissa Merrill if she would offer a prayer for the victims of that tragedy.
If you would like to join me, we'll bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight with broken hearts for what happened in Nashville, Tennessee today, to the 3 adults and 3 precious children at Covenant School. We pray for their families, we pray for their siblings, their grandparents, and their poor parents that got that phone call today, and their loved ones, for the 3 staff members, their spouses, their families. We just want to lift up our prayers to you, Lord, to hold them in your hands for healing, for grace, mercy, and understanding that can only be provided through you, God. And we, at the same time, we want to offer thanksgiving to what we have here in Union County with our schools and the safety and the investments that have been made for so many years to do our very best to take care of our students and staff and the safety of our schools. And we thank you for your many, many blessings over Union County. And we pray the same for Nashville and the rest of the country. And we offer this prayer to you, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay. We need a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
So next we have the opening comments, introducing the Board of Education and Board of County Commissioners. So if everybody just wants to grab the table,
That would be great.
Mike Rice, at-large member. Jim Morrell, District 5.
Sarah May, at-large member.
Sandra Green, District 4.
John Kirkpatrick, District 1.
Gary Sides, District 3.
Jimmy H. Benchkin, Senior, at-large and Board Vice Chair.
Kathy Heisel, Chair.
Stoney Rushing, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners.
Melissa Merrill, Vice Chair, Board of County Commissioners.
Brian Helms, Union County Board of Commissioners.
Brian Matthews, Union County Manager.
Jason Kay, General Counsel for Union County.
Michelle Lancaster, Deputy County Manager.
Patrick Milam, Assistant County Manager.
Union County Finance Director.
Lee Carter, Union County Manager.
And our staff is here as well.
Shauna Flam, Union County Schools Chief Finance Officer.
Drew Lanahan, Superintendent. We also will be joining in a few minutes Mr. Colin Moore, who will join us at this end of the table when it's his turn.
Yeah, Holmes is coming as well.
And David Williams says his apologies. He won't be able to make it this evening. And Commissioner Helms is also recuperating. So we do all that. So now, Matt, you want to...
Yeah, introduce himself.
Oh. Good evening, I'm Matt Helms. I represent District 2 of the Union County Board of Education.
Okay, next we have the county FY24 budget process review.
Evening.
So, I have just a couple slides, literally 2 slides to go through. So, wanted to share with both boards together information that our board saw at their February 20th meeting that we forwarded over to UCPS staff. This looks slightly different, and I'll explain. It's on the debt side, which is a little bit different. But we were requested by the Board of Commissioners to go back to a bifurcated tax rate. So some of you would have been on the Board of Education at a time previously when we had a bifurcated rate. This looks a little bit different, primarily because what we have done for debt purposes is allocate sales tax portions of the sales tax articles that are intended to be used for school capital and debt purposes. So as we've applied that, that changes it a little bit in terms of, if you were thinking about what it used to look like, it looks different in terms of that debt model that we've used. So essentially what you see before you is what our current tax rate is and the 3 funds that we use for the 58.8 cent. And then you see what the options were that we recommended to the board in terms of that 58.8 being bifurcated. And so at the board's direction, what you'll actually see is an education total, but we will continue to break that out for SBCC and UCPS. So there will be UCPS operating, which would be 36.11 cents or pennies. For UCPS debt, that would be 1.94. So that looks different than the original number because we, as I pointed out to the board in February, we needed to go back and really refine these numbers to make sure we're allocating everything appropriately. So we actually needed to raise the county debt penny a little bit more and bring down the UCPS debt portion. SPCC, it just so happens that theirs is 0.97 and 0.97 for operating and debt for a total of 39.99 cents. And then county operating would be 16.67, county debt 1.75, and then we have an economic development fund that is static at that 0.39 pennies. So again, what we've taken the direction from the board is to be as transparent as possible. We will be combining into that education bucket, but we'll continue to break both organizations out so you can see what that makes up in terms of the total. And then we've aligned the sales tax with school construction and debt. We're also continuing to refine this number, and so at the February 20th update that I gave to the board, we were anticipating in growth for operations for UCPS slightly more than $4.2 million. I would expect to see that after our next go-round this week, later this week, early next week, that number is probably going to go up a little bit. We, in conversations with our tax administrator, know that we can probably bump up our property tax percentage growth a little bit, probably a couple tenths of percent, which will inch up some of those funds. So we will send that to you as soon as we get that, and then you should expect to see that refined a couple more times before the manager's budget is presented at the beginning of June. So any questions about this before I jump to my next and last slide? So the next slide, this is really a look ahead. And so this, I'm probably going to say this a few times, this does not impact the FY24 budget, but we do think it's important that everybody understands that some of what we've done to alleviate some of the pressure from new debt onto the budget for FY24, but in FY25 there will be some additional funding that will be needed for that debt for both UCPS and SPCC because of the most recent voted bonds. So as I think all of you are aware, we had the opportunity as we tried to look at some mechanisms to create less pressure. Originally, when you were asked to put those bonds on, and the number that we gave you that it would take an additional tax rate was about 3.5. We went back, we did some refining, and used $10 million of money that was freed up in general fund dollars because of some money we received from ARPA. It's not ARPA money, but it allowed us to free up some other money in the general fund. And so so that helped a great deal to bring down what we felt like that burden would be. Additionally, what Beverly, along with our financial advisors, have done is really looked at our financing strategy that would give us the most opportunity this year to not have to see a significant increase in that debt payment. So what we've done is when we sell the debt for UCPS, we're only going to be required to have one interest-only payment in FY24. so we don't have to make a principal payment, which allows us to push off some of that anticipated increase in the future. So looking at FY '25, what this shows you is we would need 2.3 pennies for UCPS debt, 1.7 for SPCC, so a total of 4, which is an increase of 1.09 pennies. Again, this doesn't impact the FY '24 budget, but we didn't want to go through FY '24 and then start getting to FY '25 and spring on everybody that there is an anticipated increase because of that voted debt. I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
Can I ask a question? To verify the slides, which is appropriate. The voters approved the bonds for both entities, UCPS and SPCC. Can you, the timeline, you don't sell those bonds all at once, correct? Is there a sequence when you actually sell the bonds, have the bonds sold? So,
Yes, sir, that is correct. So we need to make sure that you are ready to move forward with construction on the project before we actually sell those bonds. And at this current time, South Piedmont Community College is not ready to move forward with construction at the same time that your entity is for your 2 projects.
so approximately how much of how dollar-wise of the UCPS bonds have hit the market?
We have not entered those into the market yet. We will be selling those in the month of April.
Okay.
And we will be closing in May, early May.
Do you know approximately how much?
We will be selling all the principal, $134 million that was approved by the voters on that day.
So you sell basically all the bonds at once, and then we draw them down as we pay our contractors and whoever.
That's correct. Once the bonds are issued in the market, we have bond proceeds deposited into a construction account, just like you would if you were building a house with your mortgage. And as you pay down those contractor bills, we draw off those construction proceeds to reimburse us.
Do you have a feel for the going rate when those bonds are going to be sold?
And if you paid attention to the market, it's very volatile right now with everything that's going on. We are still estimating at the 5% range. However, with the market, it's coming in a little bit lower than that. But with our budget projections, we would rather be safe than sorry.
Thank you.
That is all that I have.
Yes, I wanted to ask, so I make sure I heard it right. Are you saying that the South Piedmont bonds, our bonds, we can't begin until both?
No.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay.
We are moving forward with your bond sale this spring. They are not ready to move forward with construction.
All right.
So we are holding off on issuing those bonds at the same time.
Okay.
Theirs will be issued probably next spring or next summer.
Thank you.
Question. So you said next spring or next summer, is that when we anticipate SPCC to be ready for construction?
Yes, we've had some discussions with them, and they feel like that timeframe would be best. If they're not ready, we can hold off. We have up to 7 years to issue the debt from the time the voters approve them. There's some extensions as well that could go to 10 years if we needed to wait that long.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify because I think I'm misunderstanding. We can't start our construction without SPCC. I'm just making sure I got that correct.
No, that's
And how
not
long
correct.
is that? Oh, that's not correct.
No, you will be moving forward as you plan now.
Oh,
This
okay.
does not hold you up in any way, shape, or
Okay, I
form for your
misunderstood that.
construction projects. Right.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Manager, you may want to talk about, yes, SBCC, some of their holdup might be sewer issues and one of the areas they're wanting to build.
Yes, so just so everyone's aware that we do have some decisions for obviously the board to make and how we handle expansion of capacity. South Piedmont is determining whether or not their site that they originally located, which is in the Waxhaw area, is the appropriate site, whether they want to wait for that or they want to move forward with property that's in Monroe, that they could if they wanted to. So that they're really on hold until they figure out what we're going to do with sewer and how that expansion may or may not affect them.
County Public School budget outlook.
All right, good evening. I'm going to kick us off. It's great to be with everyone tonight. I want to thank Union County and also the Union County Sheriff's Office for hosting us. This is a phenomenally beautiful building. It's the second time I've had a chance to be here, and it's awesome. I also want to say to Mr. Matthews and staff, thank you for your ongoing support. Our collaboration has been excellent during this transition, and I just want to say on behalf of our administration, thank you for engaging in some great discussions. So we are pleased this evening to provide an overview of our 2023-24 budget. This is going to be a very high level. We have a little bit more than 2 slides, but we're going to go through this as quickly as we can. I just want to remind everyone that my detailed budget proposal, you will not see line items tonight on our proposal for next year because that has not yet gone to our board. That will be presented to the UCPS Board of Education next week, which is why we're leaving this as kind of a high-level overview. In my opinion, this budget cycle and next year's budget cycle are going to be critically important for our school system for 2 primary reasons. Number one is everyone has a very short memory. I'd like to remind us all that we are only 2 years removed from a global pandemic, and the impact that has had on our school system has been pretty tremendous. We are still in the recovery phase when it comes to academic and student supports. While we have maintained a very high performing status as an organization and as a school system, which we're all very proud of, the needs that we have academically and non-academically continue to increase. And so if we're going to sustain that level of excellence and high performance, getting the appropriate local funding to meet those needs is going to be critically important. Secondly, just as another reminder, next year all school systems across the nation will be losing federally funded ESSER dollars. These have been pandemic recovery support dollars that you're going to see a little bit about tonight. We've talked with county staff about that. We are really trying to build a somewhat of a sustainability plan now between local, federal, and state funding. And we've outlined some priorities for discussion tonight, or at least for information tonight. The bottom line from my perspective is the next 2 years is going to be pivotal in positioning our school system for long-term continued success, especially when it comes to the allocation of funds. This is the brief agenda we have. I also wanted to point to your attention to the handouts we're providing. You have several bits of information. Enrollment by school at 40th day. You have our current teacher vacancy information, which is at the bottom of page 2 of your stapled handouts. We're pleased to provide some building capacity information from our 40th day as well. You have some detailed long-term capital planning documents. These same documents has been provided to both boards a year ago during this conversation, and then some interesting information as it relates to how we stack up with our funding sources compared to other districts across the state. So at this time, I'm pleased to turn it over to our Chief Finance Officer, Ms. McLean, who's going to begin with an overall operational overview.
Thank you. So, as you was, I don't have to coordinate myself here. Okay. So at this point, the governor's budget has been issued. There's been some discussion at the state level related to salaries and benefits, but we have nothing definite. The governor issued his budget on March the 9th, and right now we do have some planning numbers from the state. They have provided us with our ADM projection numbers and some high-level planning information on a few of our allotments. Right now, the potential of increase, we've seen several different numbers. We've seen anywhere from 6% to 10%, and that's both our non-certified to certified staff, as well as retirement rates. We don't have a lot of information on the retirement rate. Over the last 3 years, that rate has increased over 12%. So we are trying to refine our numbers as well as we go through and get more information. The health insurance costs, we also haven't heard any word yet on any increases there. So we're using our best information and trends from prior years to start making some projections. Just at a high level, to reiterate what Dr. Houlihan just mentioned, we have begun our planning for ESSER sustainability and identifying those primary objectives that we want to continue to sustain, as well as some impacts of any unfunded mandates from the state, any salary increases or benefits as well. As we always do, we're always looking at continuous improvement with academic supports for our students and our schools. And charter school payments are always top of mind as well. Anytime we get any increases, we have to make those projections for charter school enrollment, as well as any additional funding that we may receive. Over last year, our state or our county increase was 3.2%, and based on a per pupil, that increase was only 0.623%. Some of the state rankings, and I've listed slides, there are a few in the very back with statistical, yes.
Sorry, quick question about the funding for the charter schools. So the note here is funding increase for FY23 was 3.2%. Can you give me some kind of perspective about how that may have compared to the previous year?
Well, that 3.2% was the county increase that we received, the funding increase. I don't know what our percent increase was in the prior year. I can get that information, but our increase hovers around 3 to 3.5%. For local funding, right?
Yes.
Do you recall what that payment was last year for charter schools, or what was your projection for this?
This current FY23 is a little over $11 million, and we're projecting the increase in funding for this year with any changes in enrollment will be probably close to $12 million.
$12 million, thank you.
So our state rankings, I have listed some slide numbers that are in the back, but I have also provided, because they're so small, I did provide in your handouts as well, all these same statistical information. If you'll recall, in January of 2020, we did increase our local teacher supplements. That increase really did not have the impact we had hoped on our ranking across the state. I would say that part of that is related to the state local supplements that have been provided, as well as increases from other districts. So our ranking has dropped from 22 the year before and 21, 22 to now we're at 32 in the current year. Our per pupil allocation, now that is the allocation we get locally. Our local per pupil has gone from 28 in the prior year to 24 this current year. I would say that some of that is related to the levels of funding from state and federal sources, as well as local increases or decreases statewide. You know, all of those rankings are calculated across all funds. And then as a district, our ranking with state, federal, and local dollars all the way across has not changed since the prior year. We're at 113.
So if my memory is correct, when the schools requested an increase in the local teacher supplement, I believe the schools were around number 19 in the state for the local supplement.
Well, we were, at that time, that increase should have brought us up to 19. That was what we were anticipating with the information we had. But again, I think other districts were probably doing the same thing at the same time. So it didn't get us as high up in the rankings as we had hoped.
Okay, number 32 is a surprise. Thank you very much so.
So as we look forward, the supports and continued operations, of course, enrollment in charter schools is one that we will need to address locally, as well as any state mandated legislated increases in salaries and benefits. Inflationary factors are also something we're all dealing with. We're looking at any of those operational needs, contracted needs that we are currently funding that will need to be adjusted for being able to purchase those same services. And then year 2 of our middle school athletic implementation. Some of the additional things that we've looked at that would increase our current funding needs, are some of the items from FY23, the current year, that we were unable to fund, as well as targeted instructional support needs for our students. School buildings, the recruiting and retention of school building staff is still a top priority for us, advocating to make sure we have vacancies filled, which has become more and more of a challenge. As I normally do, here's a graph that I do annually to just project what our current enrollment is, or show you what our current enrollment is, charter school students as well as UCPS students, and our projected enrollment figures for next year, along with our current breakdown of funding for charter school students and what portion of that county funding is allocated to UCPS students. As for funding sustainability plan, this is information we've provided to our board at the last board meeting just for planning and informational purposes. We've identified 8 priorities that we've currently been using ESSER dollars for, that if we can find ways to sustain those would definitely be what needed supports in our schools. Now at the capital budget overview. So always, we're looking to make sure we can maintain the buildings and infrastructure that we currently have, as well as any classroom technology needs. As you all may remember, we are in the year that we are bidding our 6 through 12 laptops for replacement. That RFP has gone out, and we are looking to hopefully potentially have that result, have a selection made and be able to place those orders before school starts next year. So, you know, that we project will be quite an increase based on the market right now, as well as any fleet vehicle replacements and other needs that we've identified in capital. So the board at our last board meeting did approve our CIP. Our identified capital needs for facilities is a little over 19 million, almost 20 million. Plus we do have some additional transportation needs. You know, activity buses and activity vans to help support primarily the middle school transition for athletics, as well as the laptops that you see here. I will note that the 6 through 12 student number is a projection, and it is 3/4 payments. So next year you will see a change in that. We will refine that, and once we have all that specific information, we will update those numbers. But I'd just like to point out that that's 3 payments just based on the timing. And then CATA will be the next round for FY24 for our band equipment and uniforms. The long-term planning and future bond requests, I'm going to turn it over to Colin Moore. He's our Assistant Superintendent for Operations and Facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. Again, good evening to see both members of both boards tonight. I want to talk to you a little bit about the 2 current bond projects that we have, and talk to you a little bit about some future bond requests. I think we also shared some information along those lines just about a year ago to the day, so happy anniversary for that. First thing I want to talk about, is the Forest Hills High School project. So this is the project that we have got at, and we use the word on the street now. These plans went out for bid toward the end of February. We currently have bidding due on Wednesday of this week, and with favorable pricing and negotiation with contractor, we'll be looking to go to Board of Education approval on May 2nd with a notice to proceed on May 3rd. So we have plans with the contractor and the school to hit the ground running. We would anticipate moving in, it's about a 25-month duration, anticipate moving into the building June of 25, and with some tie-ups or some loose ends in the construction toward the end, parking lots, things like that, would be have a project completion in August of 2025. The other project is East Elementary School, and it literally hits the street the day after the bids are due for Forest Hills. That was somewhat purposeful. We had a lot of issues with our design and staffing for some of the design firms, like most people are dealing with now. So we instructed the design firms to move forward to finish up the Forest Hills plans first, because that construction duration for a high school is going to be longer than for an elementary school. That was one reason. The second reason is if you've got two projects in the same county that we feel like are on the street, then the subcontractors are less likely, and will probably give you better pricing if you are able to stagger those and have them do it at separate times. So we purposely did that a little bit. We anticipate receiving pricing by the first week in May. We would anticipate Board of Education approval the first meeting in June with a notice to proceed on June 7th. Again, planning to start immediately upon approval. We would occupy the new building in December of 24. We would still have the old East Elementary School still on site, and then our plans would be to demolish the existing building, do parking lots, playgrounds, the other things around the area between January of 25 and June of 2025 for an August 2025 completion. So essentially both projects, East Elementary School and Forest Hills High School, will be completing at the same time as far as the projects go. Talk a little bit about our questions.
Ms. Moore, I have a question. What is your experience in your career in having students in the new building and then demoing the building right next door? What do you anticipate the challenges, if any?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're planning to do the bulk of the demolition during the Christmas break, hopefully during those 2 weeks. We got the students are out of the building. We will coordinate that with our contractor, and it's not like we're planning dynamite in the building and blowing it up. We're going to take it down with equipment, and it'll be somewhat of a calm, meticulous process. So I've done a couple of those where we've done demolitions on site, and we just got to coordinate with the school staff and make sure we're not interfering with testing days, being allowed on certain days we need to be allowed on, and we feel good about our contractor that we have under contract to be, again, use the word meticulous in their process.
Yeah, the date said starting in January through June, so that's what caught my attention.
Yeah.
But you think it might start in December?
With some favorable completion of the existing building, that could happen. So
Okay.
probably going to do some of our moving during that 2-week process, but we'll certainly coordinate our demolition efforts, at least the loud parts, with days that students are out.
I could see that'd be a lot more fun to watch than maybe an English lesson or a math lesson. So I just wanted to confirm. Yeah.
Field trips.
Thank you.
Thank you. Talk a little bit about our 2022 construction plans. So you'll see the top two items that are identified in black font. Those we brought this list to the county commissioners about a year ago, as I said earlier. A total request of about $149 million. The county commissioners voted last year to fund the top two projects, which are the Forest Hills High School and the East Elementary. That leaves us with about $19 million in unfunded requests, and that $19 million, the majority of that, with the exception of some construction of 2 field houses, is mostly design work. So what we were doing with that, with this part of that bond that we brought to you last year, was to fund design for construction that you're going to see on the next slide. So essentially, moving forward with our next plan, of the next phase of the 10-year plan, is dependent upon funding of this slide.
So everybody remembers that one of the reasons that we did Forest Hills is to get East Union a different school, to be on the same land as Forest Hills like the others clusters have. So not doing East Union Middle design and some money for renovation, we were stuck where we are with East Union.
I'd also just like to go back to even earlier, 2020.
Okay.
We were, of course, in an unforeseen twilight zone of COVID, if you will, but we had plans. These projects actually commenced 2 years earlier. The previous board decided not to move forward at the time, but yet asked us to develop a 10-year capital plan, which we did, and the items in red, except for the contingency, were not funded. So we're already, as you can see, behind the plan that we were asked to develop. So I'm hoping we can have some discussion at this meeting, because we really need, our board, we need some direction where we're going from here, because we set up a 10-year plan, and all these items, especially those that have design costs in them, and moving from, like, moving East Union to the old Forest Hills, they're moving parts and pieces that are hinged on other parts being approved. So I think it's critical, here we are in 2023, if we're going to do anything in 2024, we get some direction how we move forward with making up these projects and the projects that I assume we're going to hear about next that are on the 2024 plan. So I'm hoping that we can have some honest discussion today about that, so that we can have some direction and determine how we can develop a plan and come back to you.
I've been hearing from some of the folks, is this on? I'm playing trouble or something. We've been hearing from some of the folks in Marshall that are concerned with what's going to happen to East Union. I'm sure that maybe you've heard some of the same concerns and discussion. What is the plan? The East Elementary is to tear it down. What is the plan there for East Union? Have you all got a plan about that?
We don't have a plan in place yet, but we
have
will
not
consider
heard from
options.
very many people about the building itself.
Well, with that,
Now, again, we have to have, you have the right of first refusal on that property if we were to get to sell it or whatever, because it does front 74.
Well, so the property, and again, the kind of shape that building's in might be a concern then. If it's in shape that, I think the main thing I heard was that maybe a community center and basketball and the gymnasium and whatever.
Well, the gym is separate, somewhat separate from the building itself. It's got a walkway to get into it, but it's back.
And any of these projects, I was talking to Senator Johnson the other day, and he had talked about some monies that he was trying to secure for Union County. And I thought there were some school projects in there. Any of these that is on his radar?
No, not these, but other ones are.
So anything on the list today that we're going to see is on their radar? Is this just, so I guess, yes or no with that? If it's always.
No, these are on the, anything he has planned at this stage.
So that might be.
He picked his projects that he wanted to do.
Okay. So that would be helpful if you would, like those two field houses, would be excellent to, maybe create something that,
And I wish we could come up with a better term than field house, because it's so, I know that your plans for Marvin Ridge and Porter Ridge, first thing, they're the only two high schools in our county that don't have that type of building for like training rooms and transportation staff and other things, but I sure do wish we could come up with a better name than a field house so that the public could understand that it's not a field house. It's a whole lot more than that.
well, I'll tell you, as somebody who played football in high school,
No,
here's a warm day, a warm place to get a dress on a decent November night.
it is a field house, and its addition to that is the training room. The field, the what? Oh, yeah.
There's HVAC areas in there.
No, I'm talking about the, no. Marvin and Porter Ridge, he has this in between.
Not power plant, but the.
yeah,
No, it's not.
it's not a power plant.
Like the transformers.
No, but that's what we would add classroom for the bus drivers. The field house is separate from it. It's not the same, they're not the same
That's
thing.
part of it.
Well, and that's what I mentioned earlier, I just remember there were training rooms, and that's part of the field house, yes. But the other one is the, what do they call it, something plant.
Physical plan?
Mechanical plan?
We'll look into that further.
Yeah, I mean, because I know your plans are much bigger,
Yeah.
and it offers a lot more opportunity for the district.
Right.
Well, I can tell you from people who I talked to about those projects, I mean, again, that you go and have a bathroom for those long ladies to go to, that you have a place for them to be, and you know, when we got one people, I was at say. So that's definitely, you know, that's something that we can talk to the state, that can get those future projects, some of these things out of our way would be fantastic, rather than things that we don't know about.
All right, moving forward on our 2024 school construction plan, this would be the plan for that second phase of the 10-year plan. And you can see with all these projects, with the exception of a couple of them in the middle that are about $9 million, but the majority of these are construction for the design that we had on the 2022 plan. This plan for 2024 would have a projected cost of about $181 million. And I think that's the extent of my presentation. Do you have any questions? You want to address? All right, thank you.
Yeah, quick question, Chair Rush, you indicating that, the 2022 school construction we presented, those in red, you will be looking to move forward with those from a state perspective, as county perspective?
Oh, no, I'm just saying, yeah, I had that discussion the other day, and he was talking about some monies that he was looking for. I could have swore I thought I heard something about field house or something like that.
It wasn't, it's turf fields and lights.
Oh, yeah.
It's not.
That's correct.
Okay.
I was just asking because I didn't know, we were in a discussion about another thing, and these kind of came on the side, I just wanted to
He
ask.
typically does what projects he wants to do, so that I can have a conversation about the.
Has he ever been shared this list with, the list that y'all have there? That might be a good idea to share it with him and the delegation, to just show them. They may find something that they didn't think about. And again, I'm not saying that we're going to rely on the state, but if we could share with the state what y'all are sharing with us, if they pop up with $10 million, that would be nice.
You just saying that they could assist.
Yeah. But maybe where I could see a parent calling and saying, I would like this, and can you please get this for me? If they already had their mind on what we desperately needed as a community, they may could do both, could choose one or the other.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question about the budget. SROs, since we started this meeting with the shooting in Nashville, it would be a good, what's going on with getting more SROs? Or is there anything in the budget?
To the sheriff, I want to make sure I get it right, you asked for 4 additional SROs, and at least in our first passes, we intend to include those in the manager's recommendation.
That would be great.
Could we also, along those lines, address the $1 million that was at the last minute? Let me think of the appropriate adjective. Appropriated from our budget to fund SROs. I would like to, I think we need to, it's best under the sheriff's purview. It's his folks, his training, his expertise. I don't think it's appropriate that our operational funds be used to fund that, and I would like to request that the county consider restoring those funds to our operational budget for next year.
from a staff perspective, that sentiment has been shared with us as well, and we are working to be able to include that in the manager's recommended budget.
That is certainly good news.
How would that affect, so like, how many total SROs do we have, and what's the budget on that?
We like 9 having them in all school.
So,
But we had 4 last year, right?
I think my
So
understanding
it's
is.
9 starting this year, that we have 9 left.
Short 9.
So my understanding is the plan, if I'm not mistaken, was at 4, and then we would do 4 more possibly in the following 4 to 5, maybe we'll get up that total that you're deficient on.
but all those run to the sheriff's budget, not the.
They are in the sheriff's budget, that's correct.
Okay, so the only ones that would be the ones from last year, would be in the.
I don't think that's what they're asking for. I think what they're asking is that
$1
$1 million would just go into their operational budget. That's what I believe.
And would the bifurcation not maybe help with that too?
It's $1 million. We'll make it work.
Yeah, I guess.
The pie is only so big, so
Well,
whether
yes,
whether it's coming out of
we're
county budget or whether it's still
We're
be out there.
thankful for SROs because they're wonderful. They keep our kids safe, our teachers and staff safe, and it's important.
Well, the ones I've experienced, their interaction with the students is just phenomenal. A kid that's starting to go off the track a little bit has developed a relationship with the SRO. I know my reading buddy over at Indian Trail Elementary has been bugging me to get the SRO to get the K-9 unit to come visit over at Indian Trail. He wants to be a K-9 officer. We got about, 15 years to wait before you can have him, but he's most anxious to, that kind of relationship with law enforcement officers, I think is to everyone's advantage, not fearing the law enforcement, but to see that as a positive relationship. For, I can only say for this boy, he needs all the positive male relationships he can get.
So from what I'm hearing, if there are 9 more SROs that are needed to become 1-to-1 at our 30 elementary schools, also knowing that all of our middle schools and high schools have historically always had an SRO, then the following year we would only need 5 more. So, and what we had discussed with the schools last year and the sheriff was that we had this plan pre-COVID, and that, it was going to be like a 3-year plan. And so, we're discussing step 2, and then next year we would need about 5 more. And I just want to, as wonderful as our SROs are, all of us have so much appreciation for what Sheriff Kathy and Tony Underwood and everyone here at the Sheriff Department does for our schools. The training that our SROs do during the summer in our elementaries, middle, and highs under different settings is absolutely amazing to see the training that Union County goes through to protect our students and staff and our 53 schools. But I don't ever want to forget the investment that Union County has made over the last many years, like in video doorbells, 1-point entries, fencing. I know that, for the last 8 years, there has been a lot of capital investment in our schools that help the SROs, in addition to the SROs. So I think those 1-point entries, and especially the video doorbells, and then the sign-ins are really amazing in Union County Public Schools. And so I don't think we should ever forget all that too.
And with that said, I believe the last 2, or at least in the last few school shootings, today's school shooting was an entrance on the side door. And
It doesn't happen here.
It only takes one student to walk out, stick a stick in the door, come back in, and forget. So we have to.
Or prop one open for field day, or, we can never let our guard down.
And I think that's what today's shooting showed, that, these entries are very important, and I know y'all all know the importance. We've invested the money. We've all voted to invest money in that. But we have to get our students and our teachers understanding, because, I have had some teachers say, the students sometimes pop the door open, something happens, and I think there's signs on the doors, correct? I don't go to many of the schools, so I don't know. There's signs on the door. We just need to reinforce that with kids.
You've heard that from students?
Teachers.
Teachers in Union County?
That they're propping the doors?
That they've seen doors prop.
Yeah, they do
In our
that.
school?
Yes, they do that at field days and things like that. The kids do that. I
It's
mean,
not
I was,
listen, I'm not trying to encourage anybody to go check the doors, see if they're propped. I'm just saying,
No,
now's a good time to reinforce that.
but that's something that we need to make sure we're telling our teachers and our staff at our school, make sure that your kids, especially during field days, which are coming up now in the spring, kids, because I always help out with my kids' school, and I don't want them going in and out and just propping a door open or something, but that's something that does need to be reiterated to our teachers and staff in our schools.
And of course, that's not a.
Because that's
don't know what
that's one of
happened
the
in
weakest.
Tennessee.
I'll just say that, under the,
Doesn't mean it was propped open.
Under the leadership of Mr. McCraw and our partnership with the Sheriff's Office and our local municipality police forces, we have constant conversations with school-based staff and leadership about remaining vigilant. You can never let your guard down, and even when you bring your children in elementary school from the playground or from recess, someone has to go back and double check that door to make sure it's shut. And that is a constant conversation that we have with our staff at least on a monthly, if not weekly basis.
And I know volunteers, when they sign in the front office with their driver's license, I know your software updates every night, so you know people who should or should not be allowed into the schools. But I think as a whole community, if someone has signed in the front office, they're going to have a yellow visitor sticker. And if you see someone going through the schools or the hallways and they don't have that yellow visitor sticker, then it's safe to assume they didn't go through the proper check-in at the front office. And I think Southern Hospitality may need to take a back seat and just ask that person, hey, do you have your visitor sticker? Do you mind putting it on if you happen to see someone volunteering in the schools that doesn't have one or you don't recognize them?
Well, with that, I've also seen going into my daughter's school where I've seen parents that are going out and another parent trying to come in, and they're just letting them in instead of having them check in through the doorbell, and you can't have that either. So that's another thing we need to make sure parents are aware of, but just because we're talking about this, but that's important too.
And I'll say this, at Union Elementary many moons ago, we had the trailers outside, so it was hard to, we were going from the trailer inside that side door that was locked. And it's, like you said, one parent lets another parent in, or,
You don't know if they're an actual parent.
we may get a little too comfortable, like this was saying, that Southern Hospitality type thing. We have that, we have a door at the Government Center, and I'm guilty of sometimes not looking at somebody who's having a hard time walking all the way around, so I'll follow them to where they're going and lead them where they're going and hope for the best. So, again, I think that's definitely not a criticism of school administrators or anybody else. I think it's a community values type thing that we need to make sure that we're all aware and watching.
I'd like to bring the conversation back to bonds in the future. Pardon me, I'd like to start with a question about the past, though. In 2020, the county was kind enough to front, for lack of a better term, $4.9 million in funding for design, accelerate the design of Forest Hills and East Elementary. And I'm not clear exactly where the funding came from for that. Was that from fund balance? Was that ARPA fund? What we call ESSER, COVID funding in some shape or form. Where did that come from?
So this past year in April 2022, we issued 2022 2/3 general obligation bonds. that pays about $4.9 million.
Okay, so you've already basically paid for that, it's not
That's correct.
outstanding.
That's correct.
I would like to also request the county commissioners to consider, since those funds, the original arrangement was county expedited the design work and was to be repaid when the bonds were let. And I'd like to request the county commissioners consider allowing us to redirect that 4.9 million rather than repaying the county, is to use it on capital projects, which in order to meet the budget parameters that we've been given, will have to be cut significantly. And because you're changing budget process for the current fiscal year, we usually have, or have in the past had what we refer to as true-up funding, which we have used for capital projects. I would like to just, and I'm just speaking for me, to throw this out here, that 4.9 million be considered for capital projects with the county's approval, and especially because if we could use those funds for certain projects, as you know, we always run up against the issue that only certain projects can only be completed while the students aren't in school. So if our budget's approved July 1st and the project is going to span a longer time period than the remainder of the summer allows, we have to wait till the next year. So we're behind a year because we don't have the time to complete the project while the students are out of the building. So I'd like to ask if the commissioners could consider utilizing that $4.9 million to expedite the appropriate capital projects so that we can be ready to go June, whatever the day is when the building's empty. And for other capital projects, which I promise you before we're done, we're going to be taking a meat axe to some of our real capital needs. And that funding would help alleviate that. So I'd like to just throw that out there. You don't have to answer.
Hold on just a second, I think we have an answer for you. Hold on.
Just a point of clarification, the $4.9 million never came out of the county's fund balance. The original action our board took was a temporary interfund loan from the general fund to our CIP fund until we could issue the 2/3 general obligation bond.
Okay.
It never came out of county fund.
Right, but you issued the bonds, basically paid yourself back, right?
The bonds were issued to pay for design.
Right.
That's the funding source for design. We didn't pay ourselves back. That was the funding source.
Right, but those bonds are issued, so there's not an outstanding debt sitting there that has to be, like you didn't put it on your credit card. Like us going down and buying something off Amazon and putting it on our credit card. You didn't do that to front the 4.9 million for us. You now issued those bonds to pay that off, correct?
You have to pay the bonds back in your debt service payments every 20 years that we've issued the bonds.
Which you've already calculated in your debt service, correct?
Beverly, I think what he's asking is, do we have $5 million sitting somewhere? Is it already been folded into another budget item?
No.
We don't have that $5 million sitting.
The funding source was general obligation bonds. It was never fund balance. It was never cash we had sitting in there.
So you can see where he's saying that I think it was presented that we were going to loan upfront money to give money to the schools for that, and then we were going to recoup it. And he's saying, do we have that in a separate council?
The only place you would have it is in your current general fund, unassigned fund balance, if you as a board chose to move forward with using that for any capital projects or one-time debt service payments.
Well, maybe
that's the direction of the board that we would need.
Maybe I misunderstood the original agreement because I was understanding that when the bonds were issued, we would repay those funds back to the county. Is that not anticipation?
The way that we were explained to by a former commissioner was that you were fronting us the $4.9 million for the design for East and Forest Hills, and when we placed the bond for the $134 million bond, that you guys would get your 4.7. Okay, you're all shaking your nose, but I'm just telling you that's where it came from. I'm telling you.
What the school board is telling you, that's kind of how it was presented.
Yeah, it was.
So how it was in the county might be completely different.
So I want everyone to understand that the $134 million that you have is for construction. We're not taking back any of that money to pay us back for design.
I appreciate that, but that's not what we were
Okay.
talking from,
Yeah.
not from
So
anybody
you hear it
sitting
here
here.
at this table, that is exactly
Nobody
what's
sitting
happening.
there told me that. Somebody else told me that.
Okay, so let me just make it clear for the folks at home. When this agreement, when the money was fronted to us for the design work, there was no expectation that when the final construction bonds were issued, that part of the money, that 4.9 million and change, would go to pay off or pay back that advance. And that is not the case now. That's what I'm hearing, right?
Right, the 134 million that you're getting ready to get for this bond is for construction only. We have already paid for the 4.9 million in design with the prior bond issue.
So now I'm not reducing your construction budget at all.
The design's
Not going
a
back
construction
to
budget.
anybody.
That's right.
So we don't have, we're not in debt for that,
You don't owe us any
at least
money.
not for that.
I know this is
We just want to make sure we're understanding because we were told different, so we want to make sure
it's a
we're.
very good conversation to have, especially publicly, because that is what was communicated to the schools and the school board and the community during the election cycle.
Yes.
So that's why it's very good for us to have this conversation now, to get everything out on the table and understand what's true and what's false.
Well, if you'll also remember, there was a 1 penny tax increase that was supposed to be paid for teacher supplements. Your budget went from 126 million to 130. But that year in gross revenues alone, Union County brought in 3.4%, which if you add 3.4% to 126 million, you get 130. So the penny went for you. But that's not our fault. That's not-
It was just poor communication.
And I told you that at the time.
Yes.
So again, there's an old way of doing business and a new way of doing business.
You have to get that in.
This is a new way of doing business.
So, Mr. Sides, I would just like to say in closing, we definitely hear your request to be able to get projects started as soon as summer break begins, or even for smaller projects during winter break, which historically has been done by the schools and the facilities department, which is why this board of county commissioners asked to go back to a bifurcated budget, so that when the county does better, every other agency will do better, and we will be able to provide the schools your share of the funds to do capital plans. I remember years ago, we got $2 or $3 million back during a good tax collection year, and we were able to do some amazing work at Benton Heights Elementary with those funds. So we definitely hear you, and that's why we support going back to a bifurcated budget, so that when more tax dollars come in, the sheriff can get more, SPCC can get more, the schools can get more, and we give everyone their fair share for projects that are on the table.
I think that's a prudent financial approach, and I applaud the commissioners for making that decision. Could I modify my request, since it appears there's not a $4.9 million pot of money sitting around? We're going to agree on capital. And again, I'm going back to projects that will be in our CIP where the timing is critical. And budget, new fiscal year starts 7/1. And we tried this approach last year with the previous regime, and that didn't fly. But I would like to request to have the county consider capital projects that, of course, you feel comfortable are going to be in our CIP. Everybody's comfortable with it. If we could advance prior to the commitment, prior to the start of the fiscal year, so we could be ready to go in June when the students are out of the building to complete those projects. Since we're in a transformative year back to a bifurcated budget and we don't have true-up funds available.
I agree with you somewhat, because we have, a lot of times, the projects that we have CIP needs design. So it's not, we can't have it already that quickly. So like this coming summer, our projects from last year are getting done this summer. So there's really, unless we have some project that really needs to get done over this specific summer, we don't really need it, because...
Well, since we haven't finalized our CIP yet, because we're still in the budget process,
But you're saying
I'm
if
just
there's something,
entertaining.
right,
If
but
there's
if there's something special for this summer to get it done,
Right.
I assume we could come to them and have a conversation if they could
Let's say there's a big
front
painting
the money.
right, there's a, oh, sure.
Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Something like that needs, that the time frame is critical. I would also like to ask, since we're all asking, if you don't ask, you won't get it. We don't have the same flexibility in capital that we have in operational, as far as you give approved projects and a certain dollar limit. And then there are issues with projects might be a little bit more, a little bit less, what have you. We have to, as the current process, as I understand it, come to the county to approve those changes in capital projects to a certain extent. And I'm hoping that we could, with this board, earn the trust that we could get the flexibility. So if we hit
We're in silos right now, right, for whatever the project is for. And so, but
We've worked together, Beverly and I talked through some of those concerns that we had previously, and the only time we're requesting transfers or held up is when we're crossing categories in capital funding.
that's
So-
what I was just saying.
Yeah, okay. That's where I want to make sure.
Right, because everything goes in silos. If it's ADA, if it's expansion, if it's, give me the other side.
Expansions and innovation.
Yes. If we have money left over from last year in this silo, but we have a project that we really need to get done that's not in that silo, it is a different one.
One thing.
Can we have that?
One thing I would say, and by that number, what was it, 38 cents that you put up there, like a potential bifurcated number? So here's my experience as Board of County Commissioners. There are years where we get maybe a penny generates, instead of what we projected, it generates $100,000 more. So, for example, at a 38-cent tax rate bifurcated, that would mean that the school board, if the penny went up to a $100,000 value that we didn't project, that would be $3.8 million, just like we wrote the school taxes. So you would know that, and you could spend it on that. Now, the question would be, hopefully that you would do that, that you would use it on those types of projects, or it's going to be ongoing funds. I mean, if that penny generates that, it's going to continue to generate that money. But those are the kind of things, like I think you said with Gary, like being able to do something in a field house, like you could do those in the winter, maybe, or you could do those because it's not like classrooms.
But that's not what he's.
But I think that I get what you're saying with the importance of doing a project ahead of time. And after this year, we're in uncharted territory a little bit. I mean, we've been here some before, but really just a true bifurcation of the budget, where you don't have fire departments thrown into it, you don't have all these other things, EMS broken out. You just have education, and you have the county. It's confusing to a lot of people, these numbers. I had a town councilman talk to me today before I came, and we were going on revenue neutral. And he talked about how the county has such a bigger tax increase rate, or tax rate, than they had in that town. And I said, well, your town's about 15% of the county, and your tax rate is within 2 or 3 pennies of ours when you look at our county government. When you look at schools, the education is 62% or so of that. You know, then he started understanding that, you know, hopefully they understand now as years go on that the decisions they make in growth are going to affect the school system, which affects the budget. And he really did not understand. He thought that the county got 58 cents and their little town only got a little piece of that. And why were we complaining about them raising taxes? And so that we have to do the whole county. We have the sheriff's department, which is a big part of our budget. We have we have other things that we're funding and paying for, and we have about, what did you say, 19 cents on that bifurcation?
16
cents. So we would be lower than some of our municipalities in what we actually collect for those things. Now we're bigger. We've got a bigger area, more tax base. However, you know, these towns are thinking this. You know, they're thinking that, you know, you got all this money, why are you complaining about our taxes? But it's our tax rate, it's ours, it's yours. And together with that, we really want to show you that education is a priority. Education is the economic engine of Union County. Education is why people come here.
Number one reason people
start
come here.
their businesses. That's why all these people move here. That people complain about, and they're desperate for what you provide. They're desperate for what we provide, which is conservative government and good education. And we want to show you that we want to be partners with you, not overlords. We don't want to try to tell you can't have this, you can't have that. We don't want to tell you that.
Well, I think that speaks, and I appreciate, again, I salute you for the bifurcated budget. That makes 100% sense, that we all share in the success you're having with economic development and growth and the right kind of growth and all that kind of good stuff. I'm bringing it back to the next fiscal year, because when your bifurcated budget starts, you're going to have to close out the year and figure out how much you're going to owe us in true-up. So that's going to be on down the road. I'm talking about capital projects that we're putting in this budget that we would be able to complete them before the kids come back in the buildings if you could front us the projects to get them going. And again, by the time our budget is set, there may be one or two, maybe nothing. I'm just asking for that flexibility and the flexibility to spend our capital funds the best way our staff determines as the market and costs are in flux.
Gary, I understand completely what you're saying. I just think tonight, all we can offer to you is our agreement that we want to have that communication back and forth. It's just we can't make any promises tonight because we haven't seen the capital plan that you're bringing to us yet. So I think it's a little bit premature to agree to anything tonight until you bring the CIP to us for this year. And then if there's a couple of projects that the facilities department and the facilities committee brings to us at our next joint meeting, then maybe you could identify a couple of those projects that you would like to have done over the summer, and then we can tell you that we do or do not have that. But without having a capital plan presented tonight and knowing exactly, you know, is it a painting project? Is it a playground project? Is it, you know, a scoreboard? We don't know what you're asking for tonight. So all we can tell you tonight is that we definitely are open to those conversations. And as opposed to years ago when the school board had to come to all the county meetings and ask permission to move the money from one fund to the other, what we're saying is that between Shauna and Beverly, it could be something as simple as a phone call or an email in giving you the flexibility that we want, and then just maybe putting it on a consent agenda. But we hear you, we know the need to do work during winter break and summer break. We are all agreeing that we agree with you. But we just can't, until you bring an actual CIP to us, and then identify a couple of projects that you would like to do
starting June 10th or whatever, then we have something to bite into.
I think you have answered my question by just saying that you will entertain this.
Absolutely.
That, okay, I'll take that for a yes.
I will entertain it.
I guess maybe.
Yes.
Are there any legal issues with that?
We've done it before.
It would be something that you as a board would need to put in your budget ordinance if you wanted to open up flexibility to be able to transfer between their projects without coming back to adopt a capital project ordinance amendment. I will say by having the buckets compared to where we were historically about maybe 5 or 6 years ago, we were actually doing CPOs at the individual school level by individual project, which was a nightmare. So the flexibility has become a lot greater than it used to be, where we are now budgeting just by your buckets by year. And outside of those buckets, we do ask that you come back now to ask for transfers between each year.
Okay. And my last point, if we're obviously not going to decide on the 2024 bond tonight, could we at least come to some kind of agreement of the framework of how we're going to do this? The liaison's going to meet, the chair's going to meet. I don't want to get behind the time frame of what are we going to do in 2024 and all of a sudden it's upon us. So we have holdover needs that were not addressed in the 2022 bond. We have proposed what we proposed previously for 2024. So can we agree to some kind of framework, how we're going to hammer out what we're going to be able to do, when, and what projects? What would be the pleasure of the county commission to establish some kind of framework to come to agreement on that?
One thing, I would love to hammer out a framework of what we're going to do on sewer in the next 4 years. And if we'll even have sewer, we got land that we might not even have sewer to build a new school on. We've got land back. So a lot of these things could be, for example, a new park. Could the sewer capacity handle it? And right now the answer might be no. And with the state talking about taking away our abilities to not only zone in the county and in the municipalities, but talking about taking away our ability to pay back the cost of the facilities through not allowing us to do system development piece. Those things are really, we're in a limbo. And you know, I've been on the Board of Commissioners 12 years in total. You know, Melissa has been on the Board of Education. She knows where you're coming from, and I lean on her for her experience in that. And Ryan just got elected. We've been in 4 months, and we've done massive decisions for the county. But we're still trying to figure out what those decisions mean and what the state decisions are going to mean to us. So if you would bear with us for a year, not saying that you got to bear with us for a year on everything, but we are drinking from a fire hose on a lot of this stuff, and especially new state legislation that could affect all of us without our input.
Are you saying not to anticipate a bond at all?
I didn't say.
You said a year.
I didn't say anything about it. What I said was, we're drinking from a fire hose. We may not be able to provide, we can't provide sewer to SPCC today. That's what they just told me at the beginning of the meeting. If you say we're going to build a new high school on St. John's Forest, who's going to provide the sewer for it? We don't know. We have lines that are too small to convey sewage from point A to point B. There are a lot of things that we're having to deal with that it depends on what you come with. So we are going to be in constant discussions with you. But like Melissa said earlier, we can't be nailed down on anything right now until we know where we go from here in our utility capabilities.
Well, I understand that's an important part of the process because you can't get enough porta pots out that serves the high school. But what I'm more concerned about is the framework of how we're going to work through this. You have issues on your side. We presented a 10-year plan that we're already behind in. How do we, and what means do we communicate to put all these pieces together?
Yeah. And I think that that's something that the liaisons definitely, we talk about that stuff all the time. I know that Kathy or Melissa or either one of us talk, we can talk about these things. It's not something we want to leave you out of the facilities chair, right? Or
No.
you're not, Sarah, sorry, that's Sarah. We're not trying to hide anything, nor be secretive in anything, but until we find out this year what we've got and what we can spend, not only in our county budget, but we manage a very large utility budget, and we can't afford a $300 million sewer plant. We can't afford a $50 million upgrade at 12 Mile Creek right now. We're trying to find out how we're going to do that. Our manager, we're driving him probably crazy trying to figure out where the cash is going to come from. We're relying on state dollars, we're relying on ARPA dollars for these things. So again, this is, I don't mean to, I'm not trying to be secretive about it. We're trying to figure a lot of stuff out here that will benefit everybody.
And we were blindsided last week by that new legislation. We were completely blindsided by the legislation in Raleigh. So we kind of have to see what happens with that. Sorry, Kathy.
That's okay. I can understand. We, though, looks at all these developments that are coming in, and we talked about this. We have to take any student who comes to our door and says, we want to come to Union County Schools. So at some point, we're going to be in a place where we have to plan, because if all this is coming and McKibben is coming to do his update and all that, but once the water and sewer and all that and people is building again, it's going to be crazy. And I don't know if we have enough seats in the right places, because some of that is important to be in the right places. Right now, we don't have enough bus drivers to drive our kids to and from to school. So we have things like, that's why I think Mr. Seitz is pushing it, because we are going to get there, and then what are we going to do?
The only real available sewer capacity that we have right now, we have 5,300 house worth of capacity at 12 Mile Creek. So 5,300 houses will probably be built in that Waxhaw area. So the question is, like with Parkwood, if we do go into a bond building to Parkwood, if we're going to accelerate that, we're going to decelerate that. We've got Prospect, or any of those kids going to be able to go to Prospect
or Waxhaw or Western Union or Kensington. I mean, there's areas that.
But one of the good things for the school system and the challenges that you face is that the available sewer in the county is with the City of Monroe. And the City of Monroe, if there's capacity, not only in the City of Monroe, but Wingate has got big plans for housing and for development there. And then even Marshall has a plan to go with Anson County and be able to do some affordable housing there that will be able to go into the new Forest Hills and schools that have capacity. So it's an efficiency.
I understand what you're saying, but 53 houses that are being, 5,300 houses in one cluster or two clusters is a lot of houses.
Especially for a cluster that's already busting at the seams.
And stuff on your side of it,
Yeah, especially on our side.
And I think one of the best policies that y'all developed with the school system was this, where a new neighborhood comes in and they're put in a school and reassigned to another school. So again, like.
But I told you, there's nowhere to go anymore, especially in Waxhaw, in that area.
In Waxhaw, you need to look at Prospect. I look at Prospect on the capacity list, there's some there.
But it has to go to a middle and high.
And
Yeah,
then
they can.
Parkwood has.
So we've got lots of room at Piedmont. We, currently have room at Parkwood, but I understand, it's at 77% capacity. But I understand, with the 5,300 homes, Parkwood may be in jeopardy. Monroe's only at 71%. Forest Hill's currently at 60%. And that's why we asked for this information, because we want to know where there are available seats. Where can we do, these projects? I wanted to ask a quick question. Do you have a date for Dr. McKibben's presentation yet?
No, we do not yet.
Okay.
And we're definitely not arguing with you all in the Board of Education. What we're trying to do, there's so many exciting things going on right now with the academies, for like the Monroe academies. We desperately need EMTs and paramedics. And that is going to help us, I think, move toward that and be able to hire those people out of SBCC or even out of high school. I think they can go out as an EMT. I think, Patrick, did you say at 18? So you can have a high school graduate making a lot of money and in jobs that we are looking desperately for people to fill. The teaching jobs, the new program that you have with Wingate University, that's exciting because my daughter's looking at, she's a junior in high school, looking at being a teacher. Homegrown teachers are the best teachers. They make great teachers because they understand the community. So again, we're not trying to pour water on anything. We're just saying that, bear with us. We know you have challenges, and we're aware of them. Melissa's a very good reminder of those and advocates for you consistently, whether it's on camera or behind the scenes. And we're really working. Kathy and I are in constant communications, trying, any of you that want to call me. We'll tell you what we're doing. Because right now, the word is uncertainty. And I watched in 2007 and 8 and 9 where growth went to nothing in Union County. And then finally came back in about 12, 13, 14, started coming back. And we all, I think, went through the redistricting. And if you didn't go through the redistricting in 2013, you missed a show. And that's why I ran for re-election. I was a recovering politician for 8 years. Fell off the wagon when that redistricting came in. And my child's school had plenty of movement. But I saw the desperation of the families of splitting up children and doing those things. Melissa got in at the same time. So we're very aware and very concerned, not only with your budget of being able to afford teachers and being able to afford things, but that the operations, but the capital as well. So just if you'll bear with us a little bit, let us figure out where our utilities are going, because that the sewer plant that we put off for 9.5 years, 9 years, 11 months, that sewer plant could have eventually done 28,000 houses.
I certainly appreciate your, well, I don't appreciate because I'm in the minutia. I can appreciate your problem. And that was part of my frustration because when we presented this 10-year plan, we got no feedback, and they certainly didn't bring up the sewer issue, which, is obviously relevant. You got to hook a new school or an existing school you're expanding is got to have the sewer capacity. So you have your utility issues. We're going to get our information from Dr. McKibben that's going to identify the hot spots from us that we may not be aware of now and what we're going to have to do to address it, as well as these projects we've already identified on our bond. So it sounds like we both have our homework cut out for us, and these types of continuing close, frank negotiations or discussions and sharing of information is critical, and I want to applaud y'all because I think we're off to a very good start of being frank with each other about what we can and cannot do and how we're going to move forward.
And I think it benefits our staff too.
Okay, I understand that you're looking at the capacities at the schools, but what you don't see there is the impact statements to Waxaw.
About 4,800 houses going to Parkwood.
Well, and that's why I mentioned the 5,300 homes may be eaten up and put Parkwood in jeopardy. I think I did comment on that.
Yeah.
I do want to point out Porter Ridge. I know the 2016 bond, the classroom additions for Porter Ridge. I remember the schools not wanting to go back to the county to ask for more money when there were overages and stuff. And so the one question I will have in the future, not tonight, is if Porter Ridge High School today is at 97% capacity, I will be interested in hearing next time, do you think you're going to have to put those classrooms back on the CIP or ask for those classroom additions at Porter Ridge? So that's just a question I'll have for the future because I know those classrooms were eliminated to stay within budget.
Right. We have elementary school that's 140% of capacity, and another one in 130% of capacity. And our western high schools are all at capacity. well, so yeah,
But-
we're looking at all that.
Yeah, but many of our schools are in the 70, 80% range. So there are, I mean, gosh, we've got one school here in the 58% range.
Yes, but you have to also remember there's, like you're saying, you said about Porter Ridge, but then you have, they're building right now, I'm sorry, they're building right now over in that area in District 40, over even on like Indian Trail Fairview. But our problem too is not just that, you're talking about now you're building, you're adding all these places, like we have, we're at capacity or above capacity in some of these places, like out in Waxhaw, Weddington, all that. How are we gonna get the kids if we're building one here? We're very short on bus drivers. I mean, we can't even, we have like no transportation.
It's been that way.
I know, that's what I'm saying, but
Definitely
it's not
hear you,
worse.
but-
We're down to 200. We're down more.
5 buses. Right?
Yeah, it's gotten a lot
How many-
worse.
how many-
So that's our concern now too, is
How many EMS drivers do we need?
Most of the need is on the paramedic side. EMT, they stay pretty close to fully staffed. It's the paramedics that are about 28 short.
So again, this is a universal problem. It's bus drivers, it's.
yeah.
We
it's
understand that, we're
teachers,
just saying
nurses.
that we
but
don't.
that's why we're saying, that's why we want to be prepared, because if,
Well, I think that's what we're doing. I think that.
and that's why we want the transparency, we want to make sure that we're all on the same page and working, but.
And I think that's where we're at. I think that when we, again, these academies that you started years ago, and you know, we're moving that direction, not only for you, but for us, it's wonderful in what we're doing. And these, you know, the only other, we got a couple options. We slow down sewer, which we've done. We've done the other stuff. You know, we're doing the things that you're needing, because again, we understand, we remember, we don't want to go through it.
No.
And we don't want to shuffle kids around. That's why the new neighborhoods, you know, sending them to like if you had a Fort Ridge neighborhood that you go to people, you know, it's their room here. I think the Middle was 100% capacity or 99. But and again, all these kids don't drop in just all at once. And some of these houses have been on the books for a long time. So they're not built yet, and they may not be built. Some of these neighborhoods are half committed. They're not even fully committed. They've been rezoned, but they're only half committed because they don't have sewer capacity.
But I think the other problem is that how do we get them? We have to provide transportation, so it's easy to say that we have capacity on this side of the county.
That's what's
And
saying.
so like, how are we possibly?
So how do we provide transportation? How do you provide transportation?
Not very well.
Yeah, I mean,
Very short.
what is your
Because
suggestion?
we're short on So back in the day, we ran, 315 buses around the county, and now it's 205?
And we have,
Say 219? And we still have enough bus. So a lot of our bus drivers are running double routes. And it is so disappointing because I know you and your staff gave very nice raises last year. And so, again, it goes back to a universal problem. Because we've offered more money
Yes,
and raises.
yes.
And our bus drivers have gotten raises before other employees.
It's not about money anymore.
Yeah, I don't think it's.
Well, that was my point.
Right.
It's a universal problem.
Yes.
There's things like fear. You know, people are still afraid. I still see people wearing masks with COVID. You know, so there's fear. You know, some of the seniors that might drive a bus when I was a kid may not want to do it. They don't want to be around kids. So there's a lot of things, I guess, that could be. But again, when we all figured out, we need to not tell everybody else. Sheriff Kathy, how many deputies could you hire?
Stop building, yeah.
Do what? How many deputies could you
We
hire?
just stopped the building.
You fully staffed?
Pretty close.
I mean, that's what I'm saying.
So what do you do? So
Building.
we had this conversation today. We have the elementary school at 140% capacity, which is
Why do we add?
not a great thing to have. So it would be great to have another addition to this school, but then where do we get the money from?
Beyond adding on to it yet.
We can do these in another meeting. Let's get through with this, our staff can go home, they're gonna tell us all, they're gonna tell us we gotta raise taxes before, so we
I was already gonna say that.
So, let's move on.
What was your name again?
Liaison meetings and stuff. Again, I'd love to be able to tell people, I tell people all the time, you have to go to, be a teacher, go do these things, and we need them, but.
I need a motion to adjourn.
Oh, we still got stuff to go.
What are we doing next?
Was this, comments?
You're on charter school enrollment?
We've already.
We already
Oh,
talked
we're
about
done
it.
that? Okay, so we're on those.
So we're on closing comments.
Okay, closing comments. Do we all do closing comments?
Go ahead, you can do it.
We love you, like brothers and sisters. But like my brothers and sisters, I don't want to give you all much money. I want to give you all what's on me. We want to give you all what's on me. We want to work with you. We're on your team. You know, years ago, I said, I made a comment that, you know, we're not team UPS, UCPS, we're not team UCPS, we're team everyone. We're all on the same thing. Our children depend on what decisions we make and the decisions you make to make a better life here. And the citizens depend on us. And the more confusion that it gets, just like that $4.9 million, that was confusing that didn't need to happen. We need to make sure that we're upfront and honest with you so that you know that you have a true partner, and if we tell you we can't afford something, that you know that's the truth. And I hope that that's what we develop in the next few years as we go along. And, you know, I appreciate the challenges you guys have. It's a thankless job, probably one of the most thankless jobs in government. But y'all don't have as many complaints as you used to have. Right?
Just depends
we
on
don't
what day
have,
it is.
we don't have a lot of complainers coming to us, so we have challenges.
We're only in the middle of the year.
Yeah, something could
You have
always
time.
happen.
Let's not put out there.
But everything that we, I think, I see a bright future for us as elected officials and as staff members for this county. And we'll face the challenges and not place blame on anybody. I think in the past that's been one of the worst problems in Union County is, you know, I go to a senior citizen and say, yeah, I know you don't have kids in school. I wish I could make you not have to pay taxes. But, you know, that's the truth is that the values that I have here on my property here versus the values I have on property in another county, it's a rental. I pay money every year here. I'm not making money there. I pay more taxes and insurance than I've ever paid on equity. That's not the case here. And it's because of Union County Public Schools. And I think this board, not because y'all are sitting here, but I think this board is one of the best boards that we have. And I hope that we're one of the best boards that you guys can work with. And it doesn't pay anybody. It doesn't help the sheriff for us to be arguing over money and not doing what we need to do. It doesn't help anybody in this government. We have challenges like the sheriff might want to jail one day or something. We've got to provide money for that. And so we understand the challenges of trying to find money that's not there sometimes. But we live in a high wealth county. And when I look at other counties and they talk to me or call me and they say, man, we wish we had your problems. That's a blessing that we have. And I hope all of y'all will see that and work with us. And just not be understanding here. I've told your story about the summertime blues for years because I understand it and I get it. And I know that you need to be working when the kids are out of school. So thank y'all for coming. Thank staff for being here. I apologize to your spouses for y'all having to stay so long. But it was a good conversation, I think. Good start. Thank you.
Does anyone? Need a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much for hosting us
Thank
tonight.
you.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Nice getting you.